At my son's funeral reception, my daughter-in-law leaned close and whispered, "You have until 6 p.m. tomorrow to pack your things and leave my house." I'm Rose Thompson. I'm 68 years old. I looked at her designer dress, the one that cost more than my monthly pension, and I said, okay. Then I decided to show her exactly who she'd been underestimating for the past 6 years. But before I tell you what happened next, let me ask you something. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this has traveled. And please, stay with me until the end. Because what I discovered in that safety deposit box, well, let's just say my son Michael knew exactly what kind of woman he'd married. And he made sure I'd be protected. Now let me take you back to where this all started. Because sometimes the cruelest betrayals come from the people who smile at your dinner table. The phone rang at 3:17 in the morning on a Tuesday. I knew before I answered it. Mothers always know. "Mama," Michael's voice was strained, breathless, wrong. "Mama, something's wrong. My chest, I can't." The line went dead. I sat up in my small bedroom, the guest room in what used to be my own house, and my hands were already reaching for my clothes. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, but my mind was clear. 40 years as an emergency room nurse teaches you to function through fear. I was in my car within 4 minutes. The drive to County General took 12 minutes. I prayed every second of it. Not the pretty prayers you say in church on Sunday mornings, the desperate ones, the please God, not my baby prayers that only a mother knows. When I pushed through those emergency room doors at 3:41 a.m., I already knew. The doctor's face told me everything before his mouth opened. Young man, couldn't have been more than 35. Tired eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. The same expression I'd worn 1,000 times when I had to tell families their loved one didn't make it. "Mrs. Thompson," he said quietly, "I'm Dr. Patel. I'm so sorry. We did everything we could, but massive heart attack," I finished for him. My voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. "How long?" He was gone before the ambulance arrived. It was very quick. He didn't suffer. That's what they always say. He didn't suffer. Like it makes it better. Like knowing your 47-year-old son's heart just stopped in the middle of the night is somehow easier if it happened fast. I stood there in that sterile hallway, underneath those fluorescent lights that make everyone look half dead, and I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except remember. Michael at 5 years old, gap-toothed and laughing, showing me the butterfly he'd caught in a jar. Michael at 16, tall and awkward, asking me how to tie a tie for his first job interview. Michael at 23, graduating from Georgia Tech with his computer engineering degree, hugging me so tight he lifted me off my feet. Michael at 41, standing in my little kitchen, insisting I come live with him and Vanessa. "Just temporary, Mama. Just until you find something smaller. You shouldn't be in that big house alone anymore." That had been 6 years ago. "Mrs. Thompson?" Dr. Patel's voice pulled me back. "Would you like to see him?" Yes. He led me to a small room. Michael was on a gurney, covered with a white sheet up to his chest. His face was peaceful. He looked like he was sleeping. I took his hand. It was already cold. "I'm sorry, baby," I whispered. "I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was apologizing for not being there, for not somehow knowing, for being his mother and failing at the one job that mattered, keeping him alive." The door opened behind me. "Oh my God. Michael." Vanessa stood in the doorway, one hand pressed to her mouth. She was wearing yoga pants and an expensive pullover, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun. No makeup. Her face was pale, shocked. For a moment, just a moment, I thought I saw something else in her expression. Something that wasn't grief. Relief? No, I was imagining things. Grief does that. Makes you see shadows where there aren't any. "Vanessa, honey." I moved toward her, my arms out. She didn't step into my embrace. She stood rigid, her blue eyes fixed on Michael's body. "What happens now?" she whispered. An odd question, but people say strange things when they're in shock. I swallowed hard. "Now we make arrangements. We call family. I mean with the house." Her eyes cut to me, sharp and focused. "The house is in Michael's name. What happens to it now?" I stared at her. "Vanessa, he's not even..." I need to know, Rose. Her voice was flat, controlled. David's gone, and I have decisions to make. David's gone. Not my husband. Not the man I loved. Just gone. Like he was a problem that had been solved. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Of course, dear, I said carefully. We'll figure it out together. We'll get through this together. Vanessa's jaw tightened. We'll see about that. She turned and walked out. I stood there alone with my son's body and felt the first whisper of something I wouldn't understand for weeks. I should have known then, should have recognized the warning in those words. But I told myself she was in shock, that people grieve differently, that some people turn cold when they're hurting because it's the only way they can function. I told myself a lot of things that night. All of them were wrong. The next 3 days passed in a blur of phone calls and arrangements. I offered to help pay for the funeral. Michael had been my only child after all. Everything I had, everything I'd ever worked for, should have gone toward giving him a proper goodbye. But Vanessa wouldn't hear of it. I'm his wife, Rose. She stood in the kitchen of the house on Maple Street, the house I'd helped buy with $50,000 from the sale of my own home. I know what Michael would have wanted. I'll handle the arrangements. Of course, I said. I just thought, I've got it covered. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. You focus on being there, greeting people, family things. Family things. As if planning my own son's funeral wasn't a family thing. I backed off, let her take control. After all, she was his wife. They'd been married for 9 years. Surely she knew what he would have wanted. I spent those 3 days writing his eulogy, calling relatives, trying to hold myself together with prayer and coffee and the sheer force of will that had gotten me through nursing school at 18, through my husband's death from cancer at 43, through 40 years of night shifts and double shifts and watching people die. But this was different. Losing a spouse is terrible. Losing a parent is expected eventually. Losing a child is a special kind of hell, an unnatural order, a wrongness in the universe that you can feel in your bones. The night before the funeral, I sat in Michael's old bedroom, the one Vanessa had let me use these past 6 years, and looked at the photographs on the dresser. Michael graduating from Georgia Tech, his arm around my shoulders. Michael and Vanessa's wedding, both of them beaming. Michael holding his nephew at Christmas 2 years ago, laughing. What I didn't see were any recent photos of Michael and me. I stood up and walked to the hallway. The walls were covered in family photographs. Vanessa and Michael on vacation in Cancun. Vanessa and Michael at someone's wedding. Vanessa and Michael at a company party. But the photograph that used to hang by the stairs, the one of Michael and me at his college graduation, was gone. So was the one from his 30th birthday party, and the one from the Christmas before he married Vanessa. Every photograph of Michael and me from the past 6 years had been removed. When had that happened? A soft knock made me turn. Vanessa stood in the doorway, her expression carefully neutral. We need to talk, Rose. The funeral was beautiful. I'll give Vanessa that much. She knew how to put on a show. Oak Grove Baptist Church was filled with white roses and lilies. The music was Michael's favorite hymns, Amazing Grace and How Great Thou Art. Pastor James Wilson, who'd known Michael since he was a boy, delivered a eulogy that had half the congregation in tears. I sat in the front pew, dry-eyed and numb, listening to people talk about my son like he was already a memory instead of the man who'd called me every Sunday night without fail for 47 years. Vanessa sat beside me in a black Chanel dress that probably cost $3,000. She dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, accepted condolences with quiet grace, played the grieving widow perfectly. And she was good at it. I'll give her that, too. After the service, there was a reception in the church fellowship hall. I stood in a receiving line for 2 hours, accepting hugs from people I'd known for decades and people I'd never met. He was such a good man. He's in a better place. At least it was quick. The platitudes rolled over me like waves. I smiled, nodded, said thank you over and over until the words lost all meaning. At some point, I needed air. I slipped out the side door into the church garden. It was a warm afternoon in late September. The rose bushes were still blooming, heavy with red and yellow flowers. I sat on a stone bench and closed my eyes. The life insurance alone will cover the mortgage for 2 years. My eyes snapped open. The voice was coming from the other side of the rose bushes. Vanessa's voice, low and casual, like she was discussing the weather. "And without the extra expenses," she continued, "I can actually start saving again." "What about Rose?" A woman's voice. I recognized it. Diane Porter, Vanessa's older sister. "Where will she go?" Vanessa laughed. It was a sharp sound, brittle, nothing like the gentle crying she'd been doing inside. "That's not my problem anymore, Diane. She can figure it out like the rest of us adults. I've been supporting her for 6 years. I'm done." My blood went cold. Supporting me? "But she's Michael's mother," Diane said carefully. "Won't people talk if you just kick her out?" "People can think what they want." Vanessa's voice hardened. "She's been living in my house rent-free, eating my food, using my utilities. Michael felt sorry for her, but I don't. The second the life insurance clears, she's out." I sat frozen on that stone bench, unable to move, unable to breathe. I'd sold my house for $125,000 6 years ago, given Michael and Vanessa $50,000 of that for their down payment when they were short on cash. Moved in temporarily while I looked for something smaller. Somehow, temporary had become 6 years. But I'd paid. I'd paid $500 a month in household expenses because I didn't want to be a burden. I'd cooked dinner almost every night. I'd cleaned. I'd done the grocery shopping. I'd taken care of their house when they went on vacation. I thought I was contributing. I thought I was earning my keep. Apparently, Vanessa saw it differently. "When are you going to tell her?" Diane asked. "Right after the reception. No point dragging it out." Vanessa paused. "I've already contacted a realtor about listing the house. We can get at least $450 for it in this market. With the insurance money and the equity, I can buy that condo downtown I've had my eye on. Fresh start." "What about Michael's things?" "Estate sale, most of it. I'll keep some personal items for appearances, but the rest has to go. I'm not dragging his past into my future." There was a pause. Then Diane said quietly, "You never loved him, did you?" "Don't be dramatic. I loved what he could provide. That's what marriage is, Diane. A partnership. He got a wife who looked good at company events. I got financial security. It was a fair trade. And now that he's gone? Now I'm free." I heard footsteps. They were walking away. I sat in that garden for a long time after they left, staring at the roses and trying to understand what I'd just heard. My daughter-in-law, the woman I'd welcomed into my family, the woman I'd called every Sunday to check on, the woman I'd knitted baby blankets for in hopes that someday there'd be grandchildren, had just reduced my son's entire life to a fair trade, and she was about to throw me out like garbage. I should have confronted her right then, should have marched back into that reception and exposed her in front of everyone. But I didn't, because 40 years as a nurse in the emergency room had taught me something important. When you're in a crisis, the worst thing you can do is react emotionally. You assess the situation, you gather information, you make a plan, and then you act. So I stood up, smoothed down my black dress, and walked back into the reception. Vanessa was standing near the coffee table, accepting condolences from Michael's boss. She saw me and smiled, a warm, genuine-looking smile that made my skin crawl. "Rose, there you are. Mr. Patterson was just telling me how much the company valued Michael." I smiled back. "That's kind of you to say. I could play this game, too." The house on Maple Street was quiet that evening. All the guests had left. All the casseroles and sympathy cards had been neatly arranged in the kitchen. Pastor James had offered to stay, but I told him I was fine. I was sitting in the living room with a cup of tea when Vanessa came downstairs. She'd changed out of her funeral dress into jeans and a sweater. Her makeup was gone. She looked younger without it, harder. "Rose." She stood in the doorway, her arms crossed. "We need to talk." "Of course, dear." I set down my tea. "Sit down." "I'd rather stand." She took a breath. "I'm going to be direct. This house is in Michael's name, which means it's mine now, and I need time and space to process my grief without complications." Complications. That's what I was now, a complication. "I understand you're grieving," I said carefully, "but surely we can—" "No." She held up a hand. "I've made my decision. You living here, it's not working anymore. I need my privacy." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Vanessa, I've been living here for 6 years. Where exactly do you expect me to go?" She shrugged. One shoulder, casual, like she was discussing where to order takeout. You're a grown woman, Rose. You'll figure something out. Social Security, your pension from the hospital, you have resources. You'll be fine. $2,200 a month total, in a city where rent for a one-bedroom apartment started at $1,200. This is my home, I said quietly. No, Vanessa's voice was flat. This is my home. You've been a guest, and now it's time for you to leave. I stared at her, searched her face for any sign of the woman who'd hugged me at Christmas dinners, who'd called me Mom at her wedding, who'd cried happy tears when Michael proposed. That woman was gone, if she'd ever really existed at all. How long? My voice was steady. 40 years of nursing. You don't fall apart in front of the patient. I'll give you until tomorrow evening, 6 p.m. That should be plenty of time to pack. 24 hours. 24 hours to pack up 6 years of my life, to figure out where a 68-year-old woman with no home and limited savings was supposed to go. Michael would be horrified by this conversation, I said. Vanessa's face didn't change. Michael's dead, and the sooner you accept that, the better off we'll both be. She turned and walked away. I sat in that living room for a long time after she left, listening to her footsteps on the stairs above me, listening to the sounds of her moving around in the master bedroom, the room she'd shared with my son. Then I stood up and walked upstairs to pack. I packed my entire life into 4 suitcases and 2 cardboard boxes. 68 years reduced to what would fit in the trunk of my 2008 Honda Civic. As I folded my clothes, I kept expecting Vanessa to knock on the door, to say she'd spoken in grief and anger, to say of course I could stay until I found somewhere else to go. She never came. At exactly 6 p.m. the next evening, there was a knock on my bedroom door. Vanessa stood there, checking her watch. Time's up, Rose. I zipped the last suitcase closed and looked around the room. The walls were bare now, the dresser empty. It looked like a guest room again, which I supposed it always had been. I'll need a few minutes to get everything to the car, I said. I'll help you. It wasn't an offer. It was supervision. She wanted to make sure I actually left. We made 3 trips in silence. Vanessa carried a box each time, her face expressionless. When I loaded the last suitcase into my trunk, I turned to look at her. I know you're angry with me for some reason, I said quietly. I wish I knew what I'd done wrong so I could fix it. Vanessa's expression didn't soften. You didn't do anything wrong, Rose. You just exist, in my space, in my life, in my way. She paused. Michael felt sorry for you, but I don't. The honesty was brutal, and somehow cleaner than all the lies. I see, I said. I got into my car and rolled down the window. Will you at least tell me if there's going to be a reading of Michael's will? I assume he left something. Vanessa's laugh was short and sharp. Why would he leave you anything? You're not his wife, and it's not like you ever contributed financially to this household. The irony was so sharp it actually made me smile. The $50,000 I'd given them for the down payment might disagree, but clearly Vanessa had either conveniently forgotten or genuinely convinced herself it had been a gift. Of course, I said. Silly of me to assume. I put the car in reverse and backed down the driveway. In my rearview mirror, I watched Vanessa stand there until I turned the corner and she disappeared from sight. The Hampton Inn on Route 9 had rooms for $78 a night. I checked in for a week and carried my suitcases to room 237. It smelled like industrial cleaning products and stale air conditioning. The bedspread was polyester, patterned in maroon and gold. The TV was bolted to the dresser. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at myself in the mirror above the desk. Who was this woman? A widow at 43, childless now at 68, homeless, and apparently worthless in the eyes of the only family she had left. I thought about my life, really thought about it, maybe for the first time in years. Born in Clarksdale, Mississippi in 1958, grew up in a 2-room house with my mama, my daddy, and my 3 younger brothers. Mama cleaned houses for white families. Daddy fixed plumbing and did odd jobs. We were poor. The kind of poor where you wore the same dress to school every day and pretended it was a choice, where you learned to make a meal out of beans and rice and be grateful for it. But Mama always said, "Baby girl, being poor is about money. Being broke is about character. Don't you ever let yourself be broke. I'd worked 3 jobs to put myself through nursing school at Meharry Medical College. Graduated in 1979. Married Joseph Thompson in 1980. Had Michael in 1981. Lost Joseph to pancreatic cancer in 2001. Worked 40 years at County General, mostly night shifts in the ER. Seen things that would break most people. Held the hands of dying patients. Told families their loved ones didn't make it. Saved lives and lost lives and everything in between. Saved every penny I could. Bought a little house in Oak Grove in 1995. Paid it off in 2015. Sold that house for $125,000 in 2020 so I could help Michael and Vanessa with their down payment. And now here I was, in a hotel room that smelled like bleach and broken dreams, with $8,000 in savings and $2,000 a month in income. I could afford maybe 3 more weeks here. Then I'd have to find something else. I pulled out my phone and started searching. Senior living communities, 1-bedroom apartments, room rentals. Everything was too expensive or too far or required a deposit I couldn't afford. I sat there scrolling through listings until my eyes blurred. Then I set the phone down and did something I hadn't done since the night Michael died. I got down on my knees and prayed. "Lord," I whispered, "I don't understand why this is happening. I don't understand why you took my boy. I don't understand why that woman—" My voice broke. I took a breath. "But I trust there's a reason. There has to be a reason. So please, give me strength to see this through. Give me wisdom to know what to do next. And Lord, please don't let this break me." I stayed on my knees for a long time. When I finally stood up, my knees ached and my back was stiff, but something had shifted inside me. I wasn't going to beg Vanessa for mercy. I wasn't going to fall apart. I wasn't going to let her see me broken. I was going to survive this, the same way I'd survived everything else life had thrown at me. With dignity, with faith, and with the quiet strength my mama had taught me. I opened my laptop and started a new document. Budget. Income Social Security, $1,400 plus pension, $800, equals $2,200 per month. Savings, $8,000. Immediate needs, housing, transportation, food. I could do this. I'd lived on less when I was putting myself through nursing school. I spent the next 2 hours creating a plan, looking at apartments in cheaper neighborhoods, calculating how long my savings would last, making a list of things I could sell if I had to. By midnight, I had a realistic budget that would work if I was very, very careful. It wasn't the life I'd imagined for my retirement, but it was survivable. And maybe that was enough. 2 weeks into my hotel stay, just as I was starting to seriously worry about my dwindling savings, my phone rang. The screen showed an unknown number with a local area code. "Hello? Mrs. Rose Thompson?" A woman's voice, professional and warm. "Yes? This is attorney Rebecca Hayes from Hayes & Associates. I handled your son Michael's legal affairs." My heart skipped. "Yes, I remember. We met once at the house closing. I'm calling to inform you that the probate process has been completed, and there will be a formal reading of Michael's will next Tuesday at 2 p.m. in my office. Your presence is required." Required. I sat up straighter, ignoring the cheap mattress springs that squeaked under me. "I'm sorry, but I think there might be some confusion. Vanessa seemed to think—" "Mrs. Thompson," Rebecca's voice was gentle but firm, "I can only tell you what Michael's will specifies, and it specifically names you as a beneficiary. I'll see you next Tuesday at 2 p.m. She gave me the address and hung up. I sat there staring at my phone. Michael had left me something after all. Probably something small. Maybe his father's watch, or the photo albums from his childhood. Maybe a few $1,000s. Vanessa wouldn't like it, but she'd have to accept whatever Michael had decided. I spent that weekend apartment hunting, looked at 3 places. All of them were depressing, small, dark, in neighborhoods that made me nervous. But I couldn't afford to be picky. Monday morning, I woke up with a plan. I'd go to the will reading, accept whatever small keepsake Michael had left me. Then I'd sign a lease on the least terrible apartment and figure out how to make it work. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was all I had. I had no idea that everything was about to change. Tuesday afternoon arrived with the kind of bright autumn sunshine that feels wrong when your world is falling apart. I spent the morning at the hotel, trying on and discarding 3 different outfits before settling on a simple black dress and the pearl necklace Joseph had given me on our 20th anniversary. The pearls were real, one of the few valuable things I owned, but they looked understated. Professional. I wasn't sure why I cared what I looked like. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the last shred of dignity I had left. At 1:45, I sat in my Honda in the parking lot of Hayes & Associates, watching the front door. The law office was in a renovated Victorian house on Magnolia Street, painted dove gray with white trim, neat hedges, brass plaque by the door, the kind of place that charged $400 an hour and was worth every penny. At 1:50, a white Mercedes SUV pulled into the lot. Vanessa. She emerged from the driver's side wearing a black Givenchy dress I recognized from the Nordstrom catalog, $2,800. Her blonde hair was swept up in a perfect chignon. Diamond studs glittered in her ears. She looked like she was going to a charity gala, not a will reading. The passenger door opened and a woman stepped out. Diane Porter, Vanessa's older sister. She was wearing head-to-toe designer too, a black pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly budget. They stood in the parking lot for a moment, heads together, talking quietly. Diane pulled out her phone and showed Vanessa something on the screen. They both smiled. Planning their victory, probably. I waited until they'd gone inside before getting out of my car. Deep breath, shoulders back, head high. My mama's voice in my head. Don't let them see you rattled, baby girl. That's when they know they've won. I walked through those doors at 1:58. The reception area was elegant. Dark wood floors, leather chairs, oil paintings on cream-colored walls. A young woman sat behind a curved desk, typing on a computer. Vanessa and Diane were seated in the waiting area. When I walked in, Vanessa's head snapped up. What is she doing here? Her voice was sharp with surprise. The receptionist looked up calmly. Mrs. Thompson is here for the will reading. Which Mrs. Thompson? Vanessa stood up. Both of you, apparently. I watched Vanessa's face cycle through confusion, anger, and then calculation. She turned to Diane and whispered something. Diane nodded and pulled out her phone again. I took a seat across the room and picked up a magazine. Southern Living, September issue. I stared at an article about fall decorating without reading a single word. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. At exactly 2 p.m., a door opened and a woman emerged. Attorney Rebecca Hayes was in her early 40s, with dark skin, close-cropped natural hair, and sharp eyes behind tortoiseshell glasses. She wore a charcoal gray suit that meant business. Mrs. Thompson? Mrs. Thompson? She looked between us. Please, both of you, come in. The conference room had a long mahogany table, high-backed leather chairs, and windows overlooking a garden. Rebecca took her place at the head of the table. She gestured for us to sit. Vanessa sat on one side, Diane beside her. I sat opposite them. The door opened again, and my breath caught. Pastor James Wilson walked in. He was wearing his Sunday suit, navy blue, slightly worn at the elbows. His gray hair was neatly combed. When he saw me, his eyes crinkled with a sad smile. Pastor James? I said. What are you? Michael asked me to be here as a witness, he said quietly, taking the seat beside me. His presence felt like a shield. Rebecca opened a leather folder and pulled out several documents. Ladies, gentlemen, she began, her voice professional but not unkind. I know this is a difficult time. Michael Thompson was very specific about his wishes, and it's my job to ensure they're carried out exactly as he intended. I'll read the will in its entirety, then we can discuss any questions. She picked up the first page. This is the last will and testament of Michael James Thompson, executed on June 15, 2024. 4 months ago. Michael had updated his will 4 months ago. Rebecca continued reading. To my beloved wife, Vanessa Marie Thompson, I leave the following. The house located at 847 Maple Street, with all furnishings and fixtures. Vanessa sat forward, her manicured hands folded on the table, listening intently. The 2022 Mercedes-Benz SUV and the 2020 Honda Accord, a nod. She'd expected this. My life insurance policy through TechCore Solutions, with a death benefit of $250,000, another nod. She knew this number. I'd heard her tell Diane about it in the church garden. My 401k retirement account through Fidelity Investments, with an approximate value of $180,000. Vanessa's lips curved slightly. The numbers were adding up nicely. And my checking and savings accounts at First National Bank, with a combined balance of approximately $45,000. Rebecca set down that page and picked up another. In total, Mrs. Vanessa Thompson will inherit assets valued at approximately $925,000. Diane squeezed Vanessa's hand. Vanessa allowed herself a small smile. Then Rebecca's voice changed, became more careful. However, there is one additional provision that Michael added to his will 3 months ago, on July 20th, 2024. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Vanessa stopped smiling, leaned forward. What provision? Rebecca looked directly at me. To my mother, Rose Elizabeth Thompson, who gave me life, who raised me with love and sacrifice, and who provided the foundation for everything I became. She paused. I leave the contents of safety deposit box number 4721 at First National Bank, along with all associated documentation, account information, and legal papers contained therein. Silence. Then Vanessa's voice, sharp as broken glass. What safety deposit box? Rebecca looked up from the document. Apparently, it's something Michael maintained privately for the past 5 years. He was very specific that the contents should go to his mother. What's in it? Diane demanded. I have no idea, Rebecca said honestly. Michael simply provided the bank information and instructions that Mrs. Rose Thompson should have full access upon his death. The contents are sealed. Vanessa's face had gone pale, then flushed red. This is ridiculous. If there's anything of value in that box, it should be part of the estate. We need to contest this. You're certainly free to try. Rebecca's voice was mild. But the provision is very clear, and Michael was completely competent when he added it to his will. I witnessed the document myself. I found my voice. It came out quieter than I expected. When exactly did he add this? Rebecca consulted her notes. July 20th, 2024. He came to my office specifically to make this addition. He was very... She paused, choosing her words carefully. Very determined that it be done correctly. July 20th. I remembered that date. It was 2 days after Vanessa's birthday. There had been a party at the house. Vanessa's friends, champagne, catered food. I'd spent the evening in the kitchen cleaning up. Michael had been quiet, distracted. I'd asked him if everything was okay. He'd hugged me tight and said, I love you, Mama. Don't ever forget that. This is a waste of time. Vanessa stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Diane, let's go. We'll file a challenge tomorrow. Actually, Rebecca said, pulling out another envelope. Before you leave, I need to give Mrs. Rose Thompson the bank documents. She held out a sealed manila envelope with my name written on it in Michael's handwriting. My hands shook as I took it. The bank will need to verify the death certificate and process the paperwork, Rebecca continued. Usually takes about 3 business days. Then you can access the box. Vanessa's eyes were fixed on the envelope like a hawk watching prey. I'm coming with you to the bank. I'm afraid that's not possible, Rebecca said. The safety deposit box access is restricted to Mrs. Rose Thompson only. Bank policy. This is insane, Vanessa's voice rose. How do we even know there's anything valuable in there? It could be empty. It could be sentimental junk. I stood up, clutching the envelope to my chest. I suppose we'll find out next week. As I moved toward the door, Vanessa stepped in front of me. Rose? Her voice had changed, become softer, reasonable. Let's be rational about this. Whatever's in that box, we should share it. Michael would have wanted his wife to benefit from anything he left behind. I looked at her, really looked at her, at the designer dress and the diamond earrings and the perfect makeup. You made it very clear that you don't believe Michael would have left me anything, I said quietly. Now suddenly you're concerned about sharing? I'm just saying, you're saying whatever you think will get you access to that safety deposit box. I stepped around her. But Michael was very specific. The contents are mine. Pastor James held the door open for me. Vanessa's mask slipped completely then, her face twisted with anger. Don't forget, Rose, you're homeless. You're living in a hotel on Social Security. You need my goodwill more than I need yours. I paused in the doorway and looked back at her. Actually, Vanessa, I said softly, I don't think I need anything from you at all. I spent those 3 days in a strange state of suspended animation. Wednesday morning, I went to the bank with Michael's death certificate and the sealed envelope Rebecca had given me. Inside were bank documents, account numbers, and a small brass key. The assistant manager, a pleasant woman named Mrs. Peterson, reviewed everything carefully. "Box number 4721, she said, typing into her computer. "Yes, this is one of our larger units. Your son rented it in July of 2019 and visited quite regularly." "Regularly?" I said. "How regularly?" She clicked through her screen. "Looks like he accessed it approximately once a month for the past 5 years, sometimes more frequently." 5 years. Michael had been planning something for 5 years. "The paperwork will take 3 business days to process," Mrs. Peterson said. "Can you come back on Monday morning? Say 10 a.m.? I'll be here." Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. Vanessa. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Hello? Rose." Her voice was honey-sweet. Fake. "I was hoping we could talk, maybe have lunch, my treat." I stared at my phone in disbelief. "You want to have lunch?" "I think we both want closure," she said smoothly. "And we should discuss what you found in the safety deposit box. Or will find, I mean. Like adults. Like family." Family. The word made my skin crawl coming from her mouth. "That's very generous, Vanessa," I said. "But I haven't been to the bank yet. The paperwork takes 3 days. Oh," a pause. "Well, when you do go, maybe we could meet afterward? I really think we should talk about this." "I'll think about it," I said, and hung up. She called back twice that evening. I didn't answer. Thursday, I moved out of the Hampton Inn and into a weekly rate motel on the south side of town. $40 a night. The room was smaller, dingier, but it would stretch my savings another week. I spent the day looking at apartments online, filling out applications, getting rejected because I didn't make 3 times the monthly rent. That night, Pastor James called. "How are you holding up, Sister Rose?" I almost lied, almost said I was fine. Instead, I told him the truth. "I'm scared, James. I don't know what's in that safety deposit box. I don't know where I'm going to live. I don't know how I'm going to make it." "The Lord will provide," he said gently. "I know that in my head," I said, "but my heart is having trouble believing it." "Michael loved you," Pastor James said. "Whatever's in that box, he wanted you to have it. Trust in that." After we hung up, I sat on the motel bed and cried for the first time since Michael died. Not quiet tears, deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere in my chest and wouldn't stop. I cried for my son, for my lost home, for the daughter-in-law who'd turned out to be a stranger, for the life I'd thought I'd have in my old age. I cried until I was empty. Then I washed my face, said my prayers, and went to sleep. Friday, Vanessa called again. "Rose, please, let's meet for coffee. Just coffee. 15 minutes. Vanessa, I know I've been difficult. I know I said things after the funeral that I shouldn't have, but I'm trying to make things right. Please." Something in her voice made me pause. She sounded desperate. "Fine," I said. "Saturday, 10 a.m., the Starbucks on Highland Avenue." Thank you so much." Saturday morning, I arrived at the Starbucks at 9:55. Vanessa was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee. She waved when she saw me. I sat down across from her. She pushed one of the cups toward me. "Vanilla latte, your favorite." I didn't touch it. "What do you want, Vanessa?" She took a breath. "I want to apologize for how I treated you after Michael died. I was in shock, grieving, not thinking clearly. You didn't deserve that." I waited. And I want to make you an offer," she continued. "Whatever's in that safety deposit box, let's split it. 50-50. We can pool our resources. Michael would have wanted his wife and his mother to take care of each other." "Would he?" I said quietly. "Of course." She leaned forward earnestly. "Rose, I know we've had our differences, but we're family, and family takes care of family." I picked up the coffee and took a sip. It was too sweet. She'd gotten the order wrong. "Let me ask you something," I said. "Did you love my son?" Vanessa blinked. "What kind of question is that?" "A simple one." "Of course I loved him. I married him, didn't I?" "You married him 9 years ago. Did you still love him when he died?" Her jaw tightened. "I don't see how that's relevant." "I think it's very relevant." I set down the coffee. Because if you loved him, you would have shown me more respect. You would have grieved with me instead of throwing me out. You would have honored his memory instead of calling him a fair trade. Her face went white. You heard that? In the church garden. You and Diane. I heard everything. Vanessa opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I was venting. I didn't mean— Yes, you did. I stood up. You meant every word. And now you want to split whatever's in that box because you're afraid Michael left me something valuable. Rose, please. I'll see you Monday, Vanessa, after I find out what Michael wanted me to have. I walked out. Behind me, I heard her say, You're making a mistake. Maybe I was, but it was my mistake to make. Monday morning, October 9th, I arrived at First National Bank at 9:45. I'd barely slept the night before. Kept thinking about Michael, about what he might have left me, about why he'd kept it secret for 5 years. Mrs. Peterson met me in the lobby. Mrs. Thompson, right on time. If you'll follow me? She led me through the main floor, past the teller windows, to a heavy steel door marked Safe Deposit Boxes, Authorized Access Only. She swiped her card. The lock clicked. Inside was a narrow hallway lined with metal boxes of various sizes. The air was cool and slightly dry. Box 4721 is one of our larger units, Mrs. Peterson said, stopping in front of a box about the size of a briefcase. I'll use my master key, and you'll use your key. Then you can take the box to a private viewing room. My hands were shaking as I pulled out the brass key Michael had left me. We inserted our keys simultaneously. The lock turned smoothly. Mrs. Peterson slid the box out. It was heavy, surprisingly heavy. Take all the time you need, she said, showing me to a small, windowless room with a table and chair. I'll be at my desk when you're finished. She closed the door softly behind her. I was alone with whatever Michael had left me. I lifted the lid. The first thing I saw was a letter. White envelope, my name in Michael's handwriting. Mama, my vision blurred. I picked up the envelope with trembling fingers and opened it. Dearest Mama, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And I'm so sorry for leaving you. But I'm not sorry for what I'm about to tell you. You need to know the truth. I've known who Vanessa really is for the past 4 years. I discovered she was manipulating both of us, telling you that you were a burden, telling me that you were financially draining us, all while spending my money on luxury items and planning your removal. Why didn't I divorce her? Mama, I was weak. I'm ashamed to admit it. She threatened that if I left her, she'd make sure you never saw me again. She said she'd move us across the country, change our numbers, cut you out completely. She knew how much you meant to me, and she used it as a weapon. I couldn't bear the thought of losing you. So I stayed. But I planned. 5 years ago, I took the $50,000 you gave us for the down payment. You thought it was a gift. I knew it was a loan. I saw it in your eyes, even though you'd never say it. I invested every penny. Tech stocks, index funds, blue chips. I added $500 every month from my discretionary account, money Vanessa thought I was spending on golf and tech gadgets. Mama, that $50,000 has grown to $287,000. It's all in accounts under your name, your social security number. Vanessa doesn't know it exists. But that's not all. I had to stop reading, had to set the letter down and press my hands to my mouth to keep from sobbing out loud. $287,000. Michael had taken my $50,000 and turned it into nearly $300,000, and he'd done it in secret. For 5 years, while living with a woman who was planning to throw me out the moment he was gone. I picked up the letter again. In this box, you'll find 5 years of documentation. Text messages where Vanessa calls you degrading names. Emails to her sister planning to get rid of the old lady. Credit card statements showing $87,000 in luxury purchases over the past 3 years, while she told me we needed to cut back and asked you for household contributions. A recording of her telling Diane she married me for stability, not love. Proof that our mortgage payments have always been auto-debited from my salary. Not 1 penny of the money you gave us went toward the house. I've also included a letter for attorney Rebecca Hayes, instructing her on how to handle things if Vanessa tries to contest this. Mama, please don't feel guilty. None of this is your fault. You raised a son who loved you more than anything in this world. Protecting you was the one thing I got right. Take this money. Buy yourself a home. Live in peace. And know that every investment I made, Every document I saved, every plan I laid. It was all because I wanted you to be safe when I was gone. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you while I was alive, but I can protect you now. All my love, forever and always. Your Michael P.S. Don't tell Vanessa about any of this until you're ready. She'll try to manipulate you again. Trust me, let her reveal herself first, then show her who she's been dealing with. P.P.S. Pastor James knows everything. If you need help, call him. I sat in that small, windowless room and cried. Not the desperate, empty sobs from Thursday night. These were different. Tears of grief and gratitude mixed together. My son had known. He'd known everything. And instead of confronting Vanessa, instead of risking losing me, he'd stayed and built me a future. After a long time, I wiped my eyes and looked at the rest of the contents. There was a USB drive labeled Video, Watch First, a leather-bound notebook with dates and entries, a thick folder labeled Documentation, Bank Statements, another folder labeled Documentation, Emails and Texts, another labeled Documentation, Credit Cards, and underneath everything, a stack of investment account statements. I picked up the first one, Vanguard Total Stock Market Index, account holder, Rose Elizabeth Thompson, balance, $127,843.22. The second one, Fidelity Growth Company Fund, account holder, Rose Elizabeth Thompson, balance, $89,234.67. The third one, Charles Schwab S&P 500 Index, account holder, Rose Elizabeth Thompson, balance $69,922.11. I added the numbers in my head twice to make sure I wasn't imagining it. $287,000. Exactly what Michael had written in his letter. I sat back in my chair and stared at the papers spread across the table. My son had died at 47 years old. Died knowing his wife didn't love him. Died trapped in a marriage he couldn't leave. But he'd spent his last 5 years making sure I'd be okay. I picked up the USB drive and turned it over in my hands. There was a laptop in my motel room. I could watch whatever was on this drive there. But first, I needed to see the rest. I opened the leather notebook. The first entry was dated July 20th, 2019. Vanessa told Diane today that Mama is cramping her style. She wants me to ask Mama to move out. I said no. Vanessa got angry and said I care more about my mother than my wife. She's right. I do. I need to start documenting this, just in case. The entries continued. Page after page. 5 years of documentation. August 3rd, 2019. Vanessa told me Mama's $500 per month contribution barely covers utilities. I checked the bills. Utilities average $180 per month. September 15th, 2019. Overheard Vanessa on phone with her sister. Michael's mama acts like she owns the place. The second something happens to him, she's out. November 2nd, 2019. Vanessa spent $3,200 at Neiman Marcus. Told me we can't afford to fix Mama's car. $600 repair. January 8th, 2020. Vanessa asked me to take out a life insurance policy. Suggested $250,000. Said it's just smart planning. On and on. Hundreds of entries. The picture they painted was devastating. Vanessa hadn't just been cruel. She'd been calculating, strategic, building toward this moment for years. And Michael had seen all of it. I opened the folder labeled Emails and Texts. The first printout was an email from Vanessa to Diane, dated March 3rd, 2023. Subject, The Rose Problem. Diane, I'm at my wit's end. Rose is still here. It's been 3 years. Michael keeps making excuses. She's looking for a place, she's on a fixed income, blah, blah, blah. The truth is, she's never leaving. She's got it too good here. Free room, free food, no responsibilities. Meanwhile, I'm stuck playing hostess to a woman who judges everything I do. I can't remodel the guest room into a home office because she's in it. I can't have friends over without her hovering in the kitchen. It's my house and I feel like a guest in it. Something has to change. The next printout was Diane's response. Have you thought about what happens if Michael, something happened? God forbid. But he works those long hours, barely exercises, eats terribly. If he had a heart attack or something, the house would be yours, right? And then Rose would have to leave. Vanessa's reply, same day. Actually, that's not a bad point. The house is in Michael's name only. He bought it before we got married. When he dies, it goes to me as his spouse. The life insurance is $250,000, plus his 401k is probably around $150,000 by now. I could sell the house for at least $400,000 in this market. That's nearly $800,000. More than enough to buy that condo downtown and have plenty left over. And Rose? She'd have exactly zero claim to any of it. I set down the email and stared at the wall. She'd been planning this for at least a year and a half before Michael died. Maybe longer. I spent 90 minutes in that small room, reading through everything. The credit card statements showing Vanessa's spending, designer clothes, spa treatments, expensive dinners, weekend trips with Diane. The mortgage statements showing the automatic payment from Michael's salary account, proof that my money had never been needed. The bank statements showing every one of my $500 contributions being immediately transferred to Michael's investment account. And finally, buried at the bottom, one more document. A notarized statement dated August 1st, 2024, 2 months before Michael died. To whom it may concern, I, Michael James Thompson, being of sound mind and body, do hereby state that the investment accounts detailed below were funded with money given to me by my mother, Rose Elizabeth Thompson, in June 2020. This money was always understood by both parties to be a loan, not a gift, despite my mother's generous insistence that repayment was unnecessary. I invested this money on her behalf and have continued to grow it over the past 5 years. These accounts are held in her name and Social Security number. They are not part of my marital assets and should not be considered part of my estate. If I should die before my mother, these accounts belong solely and completely to her. Signed, Michael James Thompson. Witnessed, Rebecca Hayes, attorney at law. Witnessed, James Wilson, pastor. Michael had thought of everything. Every possible angle Vanessa might use to contest this, he'd blocked. He'd protected me completely. I gathered all the documents carefully, put them back in the safety deposit box, and carried it out to Mrs. Peterson's desk. "Did you find everything you needed?" she asked kindly. "Yes," I said. My voice was steady now, calm. "I'll need to set up access to these investment accounts, and I'd like to keep the box for now. There are documents I'll need to reference. Of course, I'll have someone from our investment services team help you." 20 minutes later, I walked out of First National Bank with 3 things: the USB drive in my purse, account access to $287,000, and a plan. It was time to have lunch with Vanessa. I called Vanessa from the parking lot of First National Bank. She answered on the first ring. "Rose, did you go to the bank?" "I did." Silence. Then carefully. "And?" "I think you were right," I said. "We should talk. Maybe over lunch? Are you free today?" "Today?" Her voice rose with eagerness. Yes, absolutely. Where?" "Your house. Noon. I'll bring something." "Oh, you don't have to." "I insist," I said. "I think we have a lot to discuss, and we should do it privately, like family." I could practically hear her smile through the phone. "That sounds wonderful, Rose. I'll see you at noon." I hung up and sat in my car for a moment, staring at the USB drive in my hand. Pastor James answered on the third ring. "Sister Rose, I need you to do something for me," I said. "And I need you to trust me when I say I know what I'm doing." At 11:45, I pulled into the driveway of 847 Maple Street. The house looked the same as it had 2 weeks ago when Vanessa had thrown me out. Perfect lawn, trimmed hedges, the kind of house that belonged in a magazine. My house, bought with my $50,000, except it wasn't my house anymore, and it never really had been. I gathered the gift bag from my passenger seat and walked to the front door. Vanessa opened it before I could knock. She was wearing white linen pants and a silk blouse, casual elegance. Her makeup was perfect. Her smile was warm. "Rose, come in. I'm so glad you called." The dining room table was set with her wedding china, fresh flowers in a crystal vase, 2 place settings with linen napkins folded into elegant shapes. She'd gone to a lot of trouble. "This is beautiful, Vanessa. I wanted today to be special, a fresh start for us." She gestured to the table. "Please sit. I made chicken salad, your favorite." I sat down and watched her serve the food with practiced grace. She poured iced tea into crystal glasses, set out fresh rolls and butter. It was a performance, a good one. We ate in silence for a few minutes. The chicken salad was actually quite good. So, Vanessa said finally, setting down her fork, the bank, did they let you access the safety deposit box? They did? And? She leaned forward slightly. What was inside? I took a sip of tea. Documents mostly. Very interesting reading material. What kind of documents? Financial records, investment statements, some correspondence. I paused. And quite a few emails and text messages. The color drained from Vanessa's face. Text messages? Michael was quite thorough in his record keeping. I pulled out my phone and opened the photos I'd taken in the vault. Would you like to see? I turned the screen toward her. It was a text message from Vanessa to Diane, dated March 15th, 2024, just 7 months ago. God, I can't wait until that old bat finally moves out. Then we can turn her room into the home gym I've been wanting. Michael keeps making excuses for her. So annoying. Vanessa stared at the screen. Where did you get that? From the safety deposit box. Michael saved everything. I swiped to the next image. This one's interesting too. Another text, April 2024. Rose actually asked if she should contribute more to household expenses. LOL. I told her $500 per month barely covers her utilities. Michael pays the mortgage anyway, has from day one. But she doesn't need to know that. Stop. Vanessa's voice was barely a whisper. Oh, but there's more. I swiped again. This is an email you sent Diane last November, about 6 months before Michael died. I read it aloud. Michael's life insurance is $250,000. If something happens to him, I'm set. The old lady will be out within 24 hours. I've already contacted a realtor about selling the house. I looked up. You were planning this before he died, Vanessa. She lunged for my phone, but I pulled it back smoothly. These are just copies, I said calmly. Michael saved originals of everything, printed them out, organized them by date, 5 years' worth of documentation. Vanessa sat back in her chair, her face pale. He had no right to save private messages. Actually, he had every right. You were discussing his mother in messages sent from his house, on his Wi-Fi, about his assets. I set my phone down. The question is, what are we going to do about this situation? What do you want? The mask was slipping. The perfectly composed widow was disappearing, revealing something harder underneath. Want? I considered the question. I don't want anything from you, Vanessa. I never did. Then why are you doing this? What's the point of humiliating me? Humiliating you? I shook my head. Child, you've done that perfectly well yourself. I'm just showing you what Michael saw. I don't understand. I reached into the gift bag I'd brought and pulled out Michael's leather notebook. Your husband documented everything. Every cruel word. Every manipulation. Every lie. I opened to a page at random and read. September 3rd, 2023. Vanessa told her book club that Mama never worked a day in her life, that she's always depended on men to support her. I wanted to tell them Mama worked 40 years as an ER nurse, put herself through college, raised me alone after Dad died. But Vanessa would just say I'm defending her again. I looked up at Vanessa. I worked 40 years, Vanessa. Night shifts, double shifts, held dying patients' hands, told families their loved ones were gone, saved lives, lost lives, put myself through nursing school while raising a baby alone. My voice was quiet, but it cut like a knife. And you told people I never worked? Vanessa's hands were shaking. I didn't mean, yes, you did. I turned to another page. October 15th, 2023. Vanessa asked me again to tell Mama she needs to move out. When I said no, she said, your mother is a leech. She's bleeding us dry. I checked our accounts. We have $130,000 in savings. Mama's $500 a month doesn't even register. I closed the notebook. You called me a leech, while living in a house I helped buy, while I gave you $500 a month you didn't need, while I cooked your dinners and cleaned your home and tried my best not to be a burden. Rose, please, I'm not finished. I pulled out the folder of credit card statements. You want to know what else Michael documented? Your spending. I spread the statements across the table. Neiman Marcus, $3,200, March 2024. Saks Fifth Avenue, $2,800, April 2024. Nordstrom, $4,100, May 2024. Weekend trip to New York with Diane, $6,000, June 2024. I looked up at her. In the 6 months before Michael died, you spent $87,000 on luxury purchases, while telling him you were worried about money, while asking me for household contributions, while planning to throw me out the day he died. Vanessa was crying now, real tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. You don't understand what it's like, she sobbed. Growing up with nothing, wearing secondhand clothes, being made fun of. My father leaving because we were too poor. Stop! My voice was sharp enough to cut through her tears. You think I don't understand poverty? Child, I grew up in Mississippi in the 1960s. My mama cleaned white people's houses for $3 a day. My daddy fixed toilets until his hands bled. I stood up. I know what it's like to have nothing. But you know what my mama taught me? Vanessa stared at me, mascara running down her cheeks. She said, baby girl, being poor is about money. Being broke is about character. Don't you ever let yourself be broke. I gathered the documents from the table. You can have all the money in the world, Vanessa. Designer clothes, fancy cars, that downtown condo you've been eyeing. But you'll always be broke where it matters. What are you going to do? Her voice was small, frightened. Do? I pulled out one more document, the investment account statements. I'm going to tell you what Michael left me, since you've been so concerned about it. I laid the statements in front of her. Her eyes scanned the numbers. Once, twice. Her face went white. $287,000, I said quietly. That's what my $50,000 loan became in Michael's hands. He invested it, grew it, protected it, made sure I'd be taken care of when he was gone. That's, Vanessa couldn't seem to form words. That's almost as much as the life insurance. Yes, that money should be part of the estate. Should it? I pulled out the final document, Michael's notarized statement. Based on what legal principle? I read it aloud, every word. When I finished, Vanessa was gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles were white. He planned this, she whispered. He planned all of this. Yes. He knew everything She looked up at me. Why didn't he divorce me? I sat back down. Because you threatened to cut him off from me, to move across the country, to make sure he never saw his mother again. I pulled out one more email, Vanessa to Diane, dated January 2021. If Michael ever tries to divorce me, I'll make sure that old woman never sees him again. I'll move us to California, change our numbers. He loves his mama more than me, and he knows I'll do it. It's the perfect insurance policy. Vanessa made a sound like she'd been punched. So he stayed, I continued, and he documented everything. And he built me a future, because that's the kind of son he was. I loved him. The words came out broken, desperate. No, I stood up again. You loved what he could provide. There's a difference. I walked to the door, then paused and turned back. Here's what's going to happen, Vanessa. You're going to keep this house, the insurance, the cars, everything Michael left you. I won't contest any of it. Hope flickered in her eyes. But you're going to do 3 things, and you're going to do them within 72 hours. What things? 1, you will never contact me again unless legally required. We are not family. We are not friends. We are strangers. She nodded slowly. 2, you will make an appointment with a therapist, a real one, not because I care about you, but because Michael would have wanted that. And you're going to actually do the work, because whatever happened in your childhood to make you like this, you need help. Okay. 3, you will donate $10,000 to the Nursing Scholarship Fund at County General Hospital in Michael's name, the hospital where I worked for 40 years, where I saved lives while you were spending money on shoes. Vanessa's jaw tightened, but she nodded. 72 hours, I repeated. Or I will take every single document in that safety deposit box and I will share them. With your friends, your family, your book club. Everyone will know exactly what kind of person you are. You wouldn't try me. I opened the door. Rose? Vanessa's voice was small. Was any of it real? Did Michael ever actually love me? I looked at her for a long moment. At this woman who'd made my son's last years miserable. Who'd used his love for his mother as a weapon. who'd planned my eviction before his body was cold. Yes, I said quietly. He loved you. At least he loved the woman he thought you were. And that's the real tragedy here, Vanessa. You could have had a man who loved you unconditionally, who would have given you anything, who was kind and good and faithful. But you didn't see him as a person. You saw him as a meal ticket. You didn't lose Michael when he died. You lost him years ago when you stopped seeing him as anything more than a paycheck. I stepped through the door. Live with that. 6 months later, April 2025. The house on Willow Creek Drive was small, just 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a cozy kitchen, and a living room with big windows that let in the morning sun. But it was mine. I'd paid cash, $180,000. Left me with enough in savings to live comfortably for the rest of my life if I was careful. And I intended to be careful. The garden was my favorite part. I'd planted roses in the backyard. Red ones, Michael's favorite. They were blooming now, heavy with flowers in the April warmth. I sat on my back porch every morning with coffee, watching the sun rise over my roses, and talked to Michael. The scholarship fund gave out its first award yesterday, baby, I said to the sunrise. To a young woman named Jessica Martinez. She's from a small town in Georgia, first in her family to go to college, wants to be an ER nurse. The roses swayed in the breeze. She reminds me of me, scared but determined. I took her to lunch last week, told her about my 40 years at County General, about the lives we save and the ones we lose, about how nursing isn't just a job, it's a calling. I sipped my coffee. She starts at Meharry in the fall, same school I went to. Full scholarship plus a stipend for books and living expenses. All because of you, Michael, because of what you built for me. A cardinal landed on the rose bush, bright red against the green leaves. I'm okay, baby. I want you to know that. I'm more than okay. I'm at peace. The doorbell rang at 9 a.m. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I'd learned to enjoy surprises these days. Pastor James stood on my porch with a covered dish. Morning, Sister Rose. Brought you some of Clara's peach cobbler. She made extra. James Wilson, you're spoiling me. I took the dish and led him to the kitchen. Coffee? Always. We sat at my small kitchen table, the one I'd found at an estate sale for $50, and caught up. Pastor James had retired last month. His son was taking over the church. He and Clara were talking about traveling. You look good, Rose, he said. Peaceful. I feel peaceful. I poured cream in my coffee. For the first time in years, honestly. No regrets about how things ended? With Vanessa? I thought about it. No, I said finally. I gave her a chance to change. That's all anyone can do. Have you heard from her? Not directly, but I know she made the donation. The hospital sent me a copy of the check, and apparently she's been seeing a therapist twice a week. That's good. It is. I took a sip of coffee. I don't know if she'll ever actually change, but at least she's trying. That's more than I expected. Pastor James nodded. You're a better woman than most, Rose Thompson. I'm just a woman who learned that revenge and justice aren't the same thing. Michael gave me justice. What I do with it, that's up to me. That afternoon, I drove to County General Hospital for my weekly volunteer shift. I worked in the ER waiting room now, brought coffee to worried families, held hands with scared patients, offered calm presence in the chaos. It wasn't the same as nursing, but it was close enough. Mrs. Thompson? A young nurse approached me. There's a family in room 4. Their father just had a heart attack. They're not doing well. Would you mind? Of course. Room 4 held 3 people, 2 women in their 30s and a teenage boy. They looked up when I entered, their faces raw with grief and fear. I recognized that look. I'd worn it myself 6 months ago. Hi, I said gently. I'm Rose. I'm a volunteer here. I heard about your father. I'm so sorry. The older woman started crying. They said he might not make it. They said his heart is too damaged. I sat down beside her and took her hand. I lost my son to a heart attack 6 months ago, I said quietly. Right here in this hospital. So I know what you're feeling right now, that helpless terror, that bargaining with God. How did you... She couldn't finish. How did I survive it? I squeezed her hand. One day at a time, one breath at a time. and by holding on to the love instead of the loss. We sat together for an hour. I didn't offer platitudes or false hope, just presence. When I left, the older woman hugged me tight. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're going to be okay," I told her. "It doesn't feel like it now, but you will be." That evening, I was watering my roses when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello?" Silence. Then, "Rose, it's Vanessa." I set down my watering can. "Vanessa, I know you said not to contact you unless legally necessary, and I'm sorry, but I needed to tell you something." "What is it?" "I sold the house on Maple Street. It closed yesterday." "Okay." "I bought a smaller place, a condo, but not the one downtown, something more reasonable, and I'm paying off my credit cards, all of them." "That's good, Vanessa." "And I've been going to therapy, like you said, twice a week. Dr. Morrison. She's helping me understand why I became the person I became." I waited. "It doesn't excuse what I did," Vanessa continued, her voice shaking. "Nothing excuses it, but I'm trying to understand it so I don't do it again. I'm glad you're getting help. I started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping women who grew up like I did, poor, scared, angry at the world. That surprised me." "That's wonderful, Vanessa." "Rose, she took a shaky breath. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know what I did to you, to Michael, was unforgivable, but I want you to know that I'm trying to be better, for him, for the memory of who he thought I could be." I looked at my roses, at the cardinal that had returned to perch on the highest branch. "Vanessa, let me tell you something. Forgiveness isn't something you earn. It's something you accept, and whether or not you deserve it isn't for me to say." "Then, I forgive you," I said quietly, "not because you've earned it, but because carrying that anger would poison what Michael gave me, and I won't do that to his memory." I heard her sob on the other end of the line. "That doesn't mean we're going to be friends," I continued. "It doesn't mean I trust you. It just means I'm choosing not to carry hate in my heart." "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you, Rose. Take care of yourself, Vanessa." I hung up, and I meant it. 1 year later, the Michael Thompson Memorial Scholarship had helped 4 students now. Jessica was thriving at Meharry. 2 more had started this fall. A 4th would begin in January. I attended every scholarship ceremony, met every recipient, told them about Michael, the real Michael, the kind, brilliant man who'd protected his mother even from beyond the grave. My house on Willow Creek was full of life now. I'd joined a book club, started attending a quilting circle at church, made friends with my neighbors. On Sundays, I cooked dinner for Pastor James and Clara. We laughed, told stories, remembered the good times. On Wednesdays, I volunteered at the hospital. On Saturdays, I tended my roses. And every morning, I sat on my porch with my coffee and felt grateful. Grateful for the son who'd loved me enough to protect me. Grateful for the life I'd built from the ashes of betrayal. Grateful for the peace that comes from choosing justice over revenge. Forgiveness over bitterness. Love over hate. I was 69 years old. I lived in a small house. I drove an old car. I volunteered instead of working. And I was richer than I'd ever been, because I'd learned something in this past year. Something my mama had tried to teach me, but I'd needed to learn for myself. Being poor is about money. Being broke is about character. And being rich, real, true, lasting rich, is about knowing who you are and what you're worth. Michael had known my worth. He'd seen it when I couldn't see it myself, and he'd made sure that when he was gone, I'd never forget it. I raised my coffee cup to the sunrise. "Thank you, baby," I whispered, "for everything." The cardinal sang in the roses, and I knew somehow that he heard me. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Drop your city in the comments and let me know where this story reached you. Because stories like this, stories about love and loss and justice and grace, they're meant to travel far, and I hope this one travels straight to the heart of everyone who needs it.